Welcome to day number 15 of the Gita Collective's immersion and full reading of the Bhagavad-gītā for the month of September. 15 means we're halfway through. I hope it's been enlivening and life-changing for you. It definitely has been for me, and I've really been enjoying this. Let's jump right into it. There's a lot to cover today. I'm a little fearful this may be a long one again, but let's see how it goes. In the previous chapter, chapter 8, Kṛṣṇa told Arjuna that a pure devotee, a pure bhakta, connected to him through ananya bhakti, through this yogic, one-pointed devotional focus, that through that practice, through that remembrance, through that type of yoga, one surpasses all the Vedic dharmas that that are there on other paths and achieves his spiritual abode. So how can one know him that way, and how can one? What is the advantage? This chapter is going to do a lot to speak about how special pure devotion is. And Bhagavad-gītā, remember this, it's so important. It'll help you understand the context. If you remember, the Bhagavad-gītā is largely a comparative study of pure devotion to Kṛṣṇa being compared to all different other Vedic dharmas or yogic paths. Generally, it's validating all those paths, but showing that they all, in their perfection, they're leading to him. If they're not leading to him, if they're practiced without him as the goal, they're misunderstood. And if they're practiced with him as the goal, they're wonderful, but generally very difficult. But if one just approaches bhakti from the beginning, approaches Kṛṣṇa with no other motive than love from the beginning, then one quickly and easily zooms to the conclusion of the yoga ladder and achieves his divine love and his divine abode. And so we're going to hear a comparison of, we're going to hear a comparison of pure bhakti to the rest of the Vedic paradigm. Now it starts out right off the bat. He's gonna speak like this in text 1 through 3. He's going to glorify the knowledge of pure devotion that he's going to be speaking of. And right from the outset, Kṛṣṇa says that, Arjuna, I'm going to share with you something very special. He says it's Raja Vidya. It's the king of all knowledge. Raja Guyam. It's the most confidential knowledge. The most confidential knowledge. This is important, right? It was confidential knowledge to know that I'm not the body, that I'm not the mind, that I am the soul, and so on. Here we're going to get the most confidential knowledge, which has to do with, especially with the love, the special love that Kṛṣṇa feels with his devotee and how he reciprocates with it. And so, let's dig into this a bit before we go further. Like, what does it mean, confidential knowledge? Think about the qualities and the virtues that we hear about being favorable for yogis. If you go through all the different classical yoga texts, we're going to hear qualities glorified, these virtues glorified as giving access to higher states of awareness. I'll give you examples. Vairagya, or detachment. Shama, or tranquility. Dhamma, self-restraint. Tapas, austerity. Shraddha, faith. Titiksha, tolerance. Kṛṣṇa is saying that all of these, they're great virtues, but they're not enough to understand the most confidential spiritual teachings of Vedanta. This requires something more. It's a specific disposition that's not tied to intellect. It's not tied to discipline or like self-determination and power. It's a state of one's heart that opens one up to this. These are confidential teachings. They are secret. Raja Guyam, the king of all secrets, the most important secret. Now we have to ask a question. I got my sign for today. It's backwards for me. So I had to, yes, which quality is important? Which quality is needed to understand the most confidential spiritual message? Right. Now I mentioned it had something to do with the heart. Now Kṛṣṇa says it right off the bat in in chapter 9. He says it's anusuya. He says, Arjuna, you are anusuyave because you are free of envy, right? Free from envy, free from hostility, free from selfishness. It's that quality that's going to open one up to understand what others might not ever understand, right? That quality, anusuyave, this freedom from envy and hostility and selfishness, it's tested in our relationships with others. It's there in our personal dealings, right? When we have insecurities based on envy, based on selfishness, based on hostility, we build walls. And those walls can obscure our perception of truth and limit our growth. And we become triggered, right? When we become triggered, those walls go straight up. And so what is so confidential? What truths remain elusive to all but the most qualified, pure-hearted seekers? That behind the universe's coded systems of laws, right? The law of karma, the three modes of material nature and how they function, the powerful law of time, and all the movements of this universe, behind them all, there's a there's a person. There's a person that coded it all. And the special love that that person has and shares with those who are open to receive and reciprocate with that love is what most people have trouble understanding. Even powerful jnanis, who studied all the Vedic texts and memorized them and can quote from them and are very renounced and very austere, if there's some animosity still in there, if there's some hesitation, some uneasiness with some person being ontologically superior to me, more powerful than me, eternally, I don't like the idea that I'm happy if it's a non-personal force. I don't want it to be a person, right? I've had so many dealings with people that have been disappointing. I can't handle the idea of an all-powerful, omniscient being that's eternally on top of me. That's the envy. And it's only through anusuyave, only through being free of that one can hear. Krishna is going to have to speak about himself and place himself as the object of meditation. Well, why is he qualified? Why should he be the object of meditation? He's going to list why. But when you hear this, if you don't understand who he is, it might sound like he's arrogant. It's almost like a parent telling a child, I'm here for you. I'm your provider. I love you and I'm here for provider and you're dependent on me. You need me. And the child saying, I don't need you. Right? And they're missing out on the care and the love of the parent. The parent may have to be able to explain how you're dependent on me, how I've always provided for you, how everything that you've ever had was provided by me. And the child's hearing this is saying, and just getting turned off by it. That's the envy. That's the animosity. Some animosity builds there. I don't want to hear this. Right? So let's get into it. After that glorification that this knowledge is the most confidential knowledge, is the king of all knowledge. It can only be understood because you're not envious, Arjuna. That's why I'm telling it to you. Then Kṛṣṇa begins to speak on what we can call Aiśvarya-jñāna, knowledge of his opulences and his powers. This is powerful stuff. In these verses, I'm not going to read them all, but Kṛṣṇa describes his relationship with the world we live in, his relationship with the material energy that our bodies, our minds are made of, the world that we're moving around is made of. In text 4 through 6, he explains how he pervades and maintains the universe through his energies, that everything rests in him. And in text 7 and 8, he reveals how the world moves through cycles of creation and destruction, and that it all takes place under his will. And then in text 9, he makes clear that although he sustains this whole world, he remains beyond it, untouched by it, in a sense neutral to what's going on. If you want to enter into that virtual reality, he'll set up the laws by which it runs and allow you to enter into it. But he's never bound by it. And then finally in text 10, it's famous verse, Mayad yakshena prakriti. This energy, this prakriti, this material world, this virtual reality, mayad-yakshena. Aksha means eyes. It's all operating under my eyes. It's all happening under my supervision, right? The entire material nature works under his supervision, his direction, producing all beings and carrying the universe through its endless cycles of creation, maintenance, and destruction. I'm behind it. It's not an impersonal force. Ultimately, it's me, the person that's behind it. And then text 11 through 25, it talks, you could say, about different types of worshipers, different ways people understand this universe that we're living in and act in it or worship in it according to that understanding. Now, Krishna just said that he's a person that's behind all the workings of the universe. And that idea, again, it can be unsettling, even triggering for many people. And they respond to it often with some sense, either sometimes it's very blatant, sometimes it's more subtle, but some sense of hostility to that idea. So they turn to different ideas or different forms of worship rather than approach the person. And in texts 11 and 12, Krishna says, he opens up by describing this. People deride me when they see my human form. They don't recognize that my transcendental nature, right? That yes, I have a form that is shaped like a human form, but it's not an ordinary body, right? When you worship Krishna, you're not worshiping an ordinary human being. You are worshiping that cause of everything, that divine root of all existence, that very sustaining force that sustains us all. So he says, people deride him, they turn away from him. And he says, in that state of animosity, he says, moga ashaha, moga karmanaha, moga jnanaha. He says they become baffled in their hopes, baffled in their activities, baffled in their knowledge. And then he contrasts that in text 13. He says, but his ananya bhaktas, right? Those that love him, that come with bhakti, that is one-pointed, exclusive. He calls them mahatmas, right? Mahatmanas tumam partha daivim prakritim ashritaha. They take shelter, ashritaha, of the daivi prakritim, of the spiritual energy, not the temporary energy, like our bodies are temporary energy. The body of our soulmate is made of material energy. The wealth that we have is made of material energy. Our reputation is something that exists within the realm of material energy. Our fame, whatever it is that we have, if we take shelter of the material energy, the prakritim, it's sure to disappoint in the end. It's sure to cause pain in the end. But he's saying these great souls that have devotion for him, these Mahatmas, they take shelter of the Daivim Prakritim, of his spiritual energy, which is eternal and fully satisfying. Bhajantya Nanya Manaso Gyatva Bhutadim Avyayam. They worship me with Ananya Manaso, just like in the last verse, Ananya Chaitasaha, with a mind fully focused, Ananya Manasaho. Gyatva Bhutadim Avyam, because they understand that this body is not an ordinary understand. They understand that I am the original origin of all, that I'm inexhaustible. I'll never disappoint, right? So what do those great souls do? Satatam kirtayanto mam. They do kirtan, right? They do satatam. They're always doing kirtan. They're always singing my glories. And then namasyantas chamam bhaktya. These bhaktas, these bhakti yogis, they're always namasyanta. They're always offering me namaste, right? They're always offering me their loving respect. Nitya yukta upasate. Just like the language from the previous verse, nitya yukta, always connected in yoga through their worship. Nitya yukta upasate. They're staying always connected. Now he's going to go back, contrast it the other way. Others that have some sort of animosity towards him as a person. In text 15, it begins to explain they become absorbed in his lesser, partial, non-personal manifestations, not realizing that all along he's behind them. Right? I can't handle that idea of a person, but I can handle three things he mentions. Ekatvena, they worship me in the oneness, right? This can refer to the Brahman, that that there's a divine oneness, and they think that I am made of that oneness. They think of themselves as God in this sense. And Krishna is going to address this in the 12th chapter, those who worship his non-personal energy. Then he mentions Prithvakvena, that some worship him in oneness, some worship him in diversity. And this refers to worshiping of the devas, those empowered beings in the universe that provide the sun and the rain and in all the natural things that we have. They'll worship them. And that's going to be explained more in this chapter in text 20 through 25. And then he mentions Vishvato Mukham, those that worship the universe itself, right? They have different ways of worshiping the elements of the universe. And that's going to be explained coming up now in text 16 through 19. Krishna says that in these texts, he says that I'm a person, Krishna, me, I am the universe. And every element of this universe that you approach and honor through your Vedic ceremonies, whatever it is, it's a manifestation of me. It's a manifestation that it's manifested from my mind and my heart, right? I'll read some of this in text 16 through 19. He says, "O Arjuna, I give heat and I withhold and send forth the rain," right? I am immortality. I am death personified, right? I am that powerful force in nature that moves a soul from one body to the next. Both spirit and matter are in me. Those who study the Vedas, just try to understand that much. He says in text 18, I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, the most dear friend. I am the creation. I am the annihilation. I am the basis of everything. I'm the resting place and the eternal seed. I'm the father of the universe. I'm going backwards now, sorry. I'm the father of the universe, the mother, the support, the grandsire. I'm the object of knowledge. I'm the purifier in the syllable Om. I'm the Rig, the Sama, the Yajurvedas. So, in other words, some people not wanting to worship the person Krishna will worship all these different elements in the universe, the sun, the moon, the rain, and they'll have their Vedic approach to it. But his point is that I am those Vedas. Those Vedas are a manifestation of my mind and my heart. The sun is a manifestation of my mind and heart. The moon, everything. Ultimately, it all goes back to me. They just don't understand it, right? There's something that creates a hesitation in them that doesn't want to approach it. So that's one way that I worship the universe. Another way is I worship the devas. I worship the demigods. And he speaks about that in text 20 through 25. Right? In text 21, he talks about how through Vedic sacrifice and pious living, one can ascend to the heavenly planets and enjoy heavenly pleasures there for a very, very long time. But gradually, their piety, their good karma bank account, the credit eventually runs down, and then they come back down and they return to this mortal planet again. So he says, thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. And then in 22, he contrasts again, right? But those devotees who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, this is text 22, Ananyas chintayanto mam, ye jana parupasate, tesham nityabhayuktanam, yoga kshema vaham yaham. To those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them, I carry what they lack, and I preserve what they have. You don't fall down from achieving the goal of bhakti. And whatever you lack in getting up there, if he sees that you're turning, maybe you're not the most austere person in the world. Maybe you're not the most learned person in the world. Maybe you got some other shortcomings. He said, I carry what they lack. And once they achieve what they achieve, once I bring them to that point, I preserve what they have, right? A very different world when you enter into the world of pure bhakti. Okay, that was text 21, 22. Yeah, that was text 22. He goes on in text 23. again, he uses some strong language here, right? Those who are devotees of other gods, of all the devas, and who worship them with faith, actually worship only me, O Arjuna. But they do so, the term that he uses, avidi purvakam. They do it in the wrong way. They do it not understanding how to do it right. They're worshiping me, but they're doing it indirectly, not understanding that I'm behind everything. So they're worshiping the deva, not understanding that whatever the deva is providing is being provided by him. When he says they're doing it in the wrong way, there's something in us that may be saying like, oh, this is judgmental, this is sectarian. No. He's just trying to help you understand. He encourages you to worship the devas if it's a step forward, but he's saying, but you can come to me directly and really find the complete satisfaction of your heart, which you will not find by approaching the devas with temporary, with desires for temporary things. So he says it's avidi purvakam. It's like if I have the intention to water a leaf, I don't pour water on the leaf. I'm doing it the wrong way. You pour water on the root, right? Krishna is saying, I'm the root of all existence. When you bring your mind, your intention, your heart to me, you stay connected and you stay nourished and you stay vibrant, you stay alive spiritually. And you connect with the entire universe in that way, as one leaf is connected to all the other leaves through the root. Okay, so that's text 23. In text 25, he's very interesting point. All along, Krishna has been saying that there's so many different paths. If we go back to text 411, he said that all men follow my paths in all respects, and we spoke about how that's true. Right? How all these different paths, in one sense, if you're worshiping this, if you're worshiping that, if you're worshiping the other, you are worshiping Krishna. Even if you turn to the material energy, that's his energy. So in one sense, even if you're trying to turn away from him, there is no turning away from him. But we should not understand that therefore it doesn't matter what you worship, you necessarily end up in the same place. In text 25, he says, this is a famous verse too. This is a powerful one. Yanti deva vrata devan, pitri yanti prita vrataha, bhutani yanti bhuteja, yanti madhyajino pimam. He says that those who worship the devas, they take birth amongst the devas. Those who worship the ancestors, which is in the Vedic tradition, you honor your ancestors because they gave so much to you, they take birth amongst the ancestors. That's what a lot of people want. They want to be with their family. Those who worship the ghosts and spirits, a darker, more tamasic type of ritual, they take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me. Right? So he's saying you need to carefully choose. There's a famous saying, yatta mata tata pata. As many faiths as there's that many paths, and the implication being one is just as valid as another. Krishna is saying here, no, choose your path carefully because it depends where you end up. Now, he's not saying that you go to hell forever or this or that, but he's saying, yeah, what you meditate on determines where you go. And if you meditate on me because I am the highest beyond this universe, then you come to me and you also transcend. You take on my same nature. And now in text 26 through 28, he's going to say, don't be intimidated by this. This path is actually so much easier. It's very simple. There's so many complicated rituals and extreme austerities that these other paths involve. He's saying, if you just approach me with bhakti in the simplest of ways, I accept it, right? He says in text 26, if you offer me a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, any tiny thing, I accept it. In text 27, whatever you do, just do it. Keep doing what you're doing. Just do it as an offering to me. Just try to use it to connect with me, right? Just make it an offering to me. And then in text 28, he says, in this way, you'll be freed from the bondage of work. He's repeating what he was saying back in the 3rd chapter. And it's auspicious and inauspicious results. You'll be free of good karma. You'll be free of bad karma. There'll be no need for you to take birth here again to live out that karma. With your mind fixed on me in this principle of renunciation, right? I renounce for Krishna. I give up my time, my energy. I give it to Krishna. He says, you'll be liberated and you'll come to me. And then he's explaining, try to understand, I'm not to be intimidated by. He says, I envy no one. I have no hostility towards anyone. nor am I partial to anyone. I'm not the kind of person that it's my family that I especially like, and other people are going to get the short end of the stick. No, I'm impartial. But anyone who renders service to me in devotion, anyone that comes to me with a loving heart, he says they're my friend. He says they're in me, and I'm a friend to them. Right? I become intimate with them. Right? Anyone that does it, it doesn't matter who you are or where you're coming from. I'm impartial. I have no animosity to anyone. Don't fear me at all. Right? No hangups, no triggers. Right? And then he's going to go on and he's going to say, he's going to show us it just doesn't matter anything external. In text, he says a powerful statement. It has to be understood properly. But in text 30, he says, even if one commits the most abominable action, even if you have a background that's really bad, it doesn't matter to me. He says that person, when they begin to turn to me, if they're engaged in bhakti, then they should be considered to be saintly. If they've let that go and turned to me, then I wipe the slate clean, right? I accept them as saintly because they're properly situated in their determination. I don't want to be that anymore. I want to be with you, Kṛṣṇa. And then now in text 30, he says text 31, he continues that quickly they become righteous. Quickly they're purified that and they attain lasting peace. And then he says, declared boldly, O Arjuna, my devotee never perishes, right? There's no dark side for them. It only brings auspiciousness turning to him. Now, text 32 is a text we need to talk about. I wanted to share something on this because some of this language is, I get it when people hear this and it's going to sound jarring, I suppose you can say. In text 32, Krishna, he begins to speak about lower birth, and he specifies 3 categories that he describes as lower birth. Striya, which means women. Vaishya, which means business leaders. And Shudras, which means like laborers or common employees. And so he brings into the conversation the ideas of sex and gender and vocation, right? He brings them into the conversation. Now, this can sound jarring. And when we hear it, naturally a question arises in us. What do you mean lower birth? Like lower in what sense? And it's not that these people are considered lower in dignity or lower in worth in any way. And as a matter of fact, the whole point here is what he's saying is that no matter who you are or how you're born or what your external situation is, I don't consider it. That's what he's saying in the verse, right? So he's saying it's not that they're lower in terms of dignity or worth. He means that within the structure of Vedic society, they had less access to formal training in spiritual knowledge, which can be considered advantageous. That if you knew more about this path, you'd be able to follow it. And so in that system, the Brahmanas, they were people that were meant to live very simply, very purely, very detached from wealth, naturally very compassionate, dedicated to serving others by studying and teaching and fully embodying these sacred texts. So it could be a natural path for their spiritual advancement and for their purification and for their spiritual advancement. And so that role as a Brahmin, they would be trained and they would receive special training in the Vedas and in Vedanta. But that training was reserved for a very small fraction of the society. And if you were born male, and if you were born in a Brahmin family, which is going to be like 0.01% or something like that, then that education was practically just like handed to you from the day that you're born. And if you weren't, then it's something that you would have to pursue more indirectly. And so when Kṛṣṇa lists Vaishyas and Striyas and Shudras, he's pointing to groups that within the structure of that time, they had less access to this kind of training. They weren't handed the same opportunities. But only in that sense are they considered lower. But here's the point. Here's like the radical beauty of what Kṛṣṇa is saying is he's saying none of that matters to me. That's the whole point to the verse. I don't consider these things. I'm not a scary person. I'm a loving person. And don't think that there's any disqualification. If you turn to me with love, I reciprocate fully. I carry what you lack. I preserve what you have. I don't care what family you're born into. I don't care what your occupation is. I don't care if you had a dark past. I don't care what your gender is. I don't care if you never had the chance to sit in a classroom and study the Vedas as a boy. If you come to me with love, I'm eager to reciprocate with you fully. And that's the real point of this verse. So in a culture where birth and gender and occupation carried a lot of weight, Kṛṣṇa is just sweeping that all aside and throwing the door like wide open and saying devotion, the essence of spirituality itself and of life itself, is the most important consideration. It's all about the heart. And that's why bhakti is so powerful, right? When you get into it, it makes the highest spiritual realization available to everyone, no matter what your circumstances are. And in relation to devotion, in relation to genuine approach with devotion and love, all other considerations are unimportant. Now, as a side note, I also want to get into this. Sometimes in Srila Prabhupada's purports, you can also read more language that's jarring like that, and particularly in some of his statements about women. And what I want to share, I just want to share ways that might be helpful for understanding this. And first of all, Prabhupada himself acknowledged limitations in his use of the English language. He's saying, sometimes I'm going to express things. I'll give an example. There, in the commentary to this Bhagavad-gītā, there's a place where he says women should be treated like children. There are other places in the commentaries in Srimad Bhagavatam where he says women and elders, the elderly, and brahmanas should be treated like children. What does he mean they should be treated like children? When we Western people brought up the way we were, when we say should be treated like children, we think it means they should be controlled and not shown full respect and considered less knowledgeable and less this and less that. That's not what he was saying. When he said treated like children, he says they should be treasured and protected like you protect your children, because he's saying even about the brahmanas, right, who are the male leaders, spiritual leaders of society. So sometimes when he says they should be treated like children, he's thinking one thing and we're hearing it another. So there's a really famous commentary that he gives. It's Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 11, where he says, "Our presenting this matter," and he says, "Our presenting this matter in adequate language, especially a foreign language, will certainly fail, and there will be so many literary discrepancies despite our honest attempt to present it in a proper way." He's saying, English is not my first language, and I'm going to make mistakes with this, but we are sure that with our faults in this connection, the seriousness of the subject matter will be taken into consideration. He's saying, please forgive any jarring language that I may use. Please consider the importance of the spiritual subject matter and look past that, if you will, is what he's saying. So when I come across some jarring language like that, I try to keep in mind the context and try to really understand the substance of what he's saying and how he as a person actually lived and taught through his example. And this is something that I know a lot of Srila Prabhupada's female disciples, people that lived with him and served him and under his guidance. And they really had firsthand experience of his genuine appreciation and respect for his female disciples. And he, even historically, he did some important things. He made it a point to create ashrams for women in all of his temples, which was a rarity. And he also provided the training and the Brahminical initiation to all women who came forward to him with sincerity. And there's some evidence in the ancient Vedic text that some girls underwent the Upanayana ceremony, the ceremony of initiation into becoming a Brahmana. But in Prabhupada's time and in modern times, it's practically unheard of. He took a bold step and he made a powerful statement by saying, I don't care, man or woman. If someone, Westerner, a lot of people say no Westerners should be allowed. A lot of people say you need to be born in a Indian Brahmin family. He said, no, it's merit, it's qualification. It doesn't matter where you're from. And it also doesn't matter man or woman, right? Black, white, I don't care. If I see that sincerity and that they're determined to live as a Brahmin and teach as a Brahmin, then I'll give them that Brahmin initiation. Okay, so that's I wanted to address that, and it's an important point, but try to understand the context of, that's the most important thing I want to say, is that Krishna's demonstrating through this 9th chapter that I am behind everything, and I'm a powerful, all-powerful person behind everything. And many turn away from me in fear of that. You don't need to be afraid. I'm not judgmental. I don't care where you're coming from. I don't care about your past. If I see that you come to me with love, I reciprocate entirely and I accept you. And then let me give a summary of the chapter now, and I'll hold the last verse, 934, which is such an important verse. But chapter 9 is called the most confidential knowledge. And Krishna reveals to Arjuna that it's confidential because without letting go of some inner envy or hostility, we won't be able to hear the very special message that behind this entire universe, there's a person who is directing it. And he explains that the whole cosmos is made of his energy and is functioning under his supervision, yet he himself remains beyond it and is never bound by it. And Krishna says that people deride him when they see his human life form, not understanding his transcendental nature. But some great souls recognize him for what he is, and they take shelter of him and his divine energy. But for most people, even many spiritual seekers in the Vedic tradition, the idea of a person standing behind everything is unsettling and triggering. And they respond to that idea with some sense of envy or hostility, and they deny it. So they turn to different types of worship. They worship the devas. They worship his non-personal manifestations, lesser manifestations, you could say. And he rewards them. But because they approach him without love, the rewards are only temporary. And from a higher perspective, they are meager. But in contrast, when someone approaches him with love, even if they have practically nothing to offer, he accepts it. And he responds with a very special type of affection. And he says that the devotee's love is so moving and so powerful that it touches and moves that unlimitedly powerful person who's maintaining the entire universe. And and to that person that comes with love, he reveals all of his sweetness to that bhakta, to that devotee. And when this kind of love is present, when someone comes to Krishna with that kind of love, he sets aside all other considerations. Past misdeeds don't matter. Social position doesn't matter. Gender doesn't matter. Occupation doesn't matter. And then he ends the chapter with the central message of the entire Gita. It's actually right in the dead center, because 18 chapters in the Gita, that means right at the end of 9, right between 9 and 10 is the center. And this is the central message, which he'll also repeat at the very end of the Gita. So it's its center, it's its conclusion. Very famous verse. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuro. He says, always think of me. Become my devotee. Offer your obeisances and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Right? When he says almost the exact same verse in the 18th chapter, he says, because you're so dear to me. Right? This is Krishna. He's saying, I'm a person. He says me 5 or 6 times in this verse. He's directing your love. He says, direct your love to me. And then I'll pull you right out of the virtual reality that you're in, because you've demonstrated you're ready to love. You've learned the lesson that this universe is meant to teach, and you achieve the highest yoga, the highest way, the highest understanding, the highest way to become free of this virtual reality by understanding, let go of my animosity towards Krishna, my animosity towards any living being which I see in relation to Krishna. Open myself up with love, and I'll be delivered to the highest point. This is the most confidential knowledge. This is what we can only understand when we let go of inner hostility. This is the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad-gītā, the most confidential knowledge. Thank you all so much. Sorry I went on for so long. I will see you tomorrow for chapter 10. Hari Om Tat Sat.